Hi, welcome to enThriven. I'm Duncan and this is Kin. And in this podcast, what we do is we discuss thriving at work. We look at the science, we look at some practical things that people can do, the difference between best practice in inverted commas and what actually works. And so Kin, what do we have for this week?
Today, we're going to be looking at feedback that works, so the neuroscience of growth. And I think it's a topic that's very difficult for a lot of people, something that I personally would be very interested in as a manager. I think a lot of us have probably heard of constructive feedback, and just hearing those two words together already make you cringe inside. So I think a lot of people, struggle with this topic of how do I give negative feedback or any kind of feedback at all. And I think currently the practices that are out there are still the same ones that get circulated again and again. Yep. I remember very clearly when I was a junior manager, just recently promoted, and I had to give feedback on a report. And, I ask what's the best way, what are some of the best things that they've learned. And yet again, the first thing that came to people's mind is, well, what you do is the feedback sandwich. And I bet a lot of people have heard about this feedback sandwich. And I just thought, well, haven't we been passing that around for a really long time? Yeah. And given that everybody knows about it, I mean, you'd start to already anticipate it. So to me, that doesn't really work. And everyone always says, like,
and the feedback sandwich is you give a compliment and then a criticism and then a compliment.
Yeah. Right? And you anticipate it. And so even when someone says, you I just want to talk about this, you're really good at it, and you always sit there and think, okay, just get to the butt now, So let's talk about some of these like current practices. So there's the feedback sandwich, and fundamentally under that there is this belief that constructive criticism is about targeting what you're weakest at, right? And if I can fix the weakest link, then we all get stronger if we continually targeting the weakest link.
So, and the very fact that we say constructive feedback when what we really mean is critical feedback should be an indication that something's wrong. Well, why are we calling it something that it's not, right? What we're really talking about here is negative feedback, critical feedback. And there are a few problems. Now, obviously, if somebody is doing something wrong that needs to stop, it's causing a problem, it needs to stop, of course. Tell them, and I wouldn't even sandwich it, I would just tell them bluntly, okay, that's a problem, stop doing it, right? But that's about preventing failure. And of course, we have to prevent failure. But if our focus is only doing things to prevent failure, the best we can ever be is not failing, right? Mm-hmm. That's not how people grow. It's not how people become excellent. So that's the first thing. The second thing is we think that if we focus on people's weakest areas, that's where there's the most room for growth. And I get the impression, so we have this negative bias, that's probably part of it, but I get the impression that also we kind of think of these things as like a score out of 10 or a score out of 100. So you got 20 out of 100 on this. So your room for improvement is 80. And you got 98 on this other thing. So your room for improvement there is 2. Mm-hmm. But that's not how our brain works. Like in reality, there is no top of the graph, right? In reality, those things, that thing where you got 98%, that's when your neurons were firing. That's when you were producing dopamine and acetylcholine and probably also oxytocin if you were working with other people, and serotonin. And your neurons were making new connections and so forth. The sky is the limit, right? Who knows how far above that 98 you can get, right? You wouldn't be able to score at 98. That's why I think we always say, well, nobody can get 100, right? Because we have to leave that room. But in that 2% between 98 and 100, there's a vast area there, right? It's a bit like the TARDIS. It's bigger on the inside, right? But that thing that you're getting 20%, that's where your brain is trying to do things that it just battles to do. It's trying to use circuits that just, you don't really have the connections. And your room for growth there is not, 80. Your room for growth there is 10 or 15, but it's not much. It'll take a lot of effort to get some growth, because in that thing, it's going to be really difficult to get those neurochemicals going. It's not how your brain is structured. So the place where there's the most room for growth is in the strengths, in the things that the person does the best. The least area for growth is in the things that they do the worst. And I think the other thing to say about that is we have this idea that people should be well-rounded. You should be kind of good at everything. But the reality is people who are brilliant are generally brilliant at one or two things and rubbish at other things, right? And as long as those things they're rubbish at are not causing failure, don't worry about them so much, right? What you want in a team is not a team full of well-rounded people. You want a well-rounded team so that you have people in the team who are very good at, very strong in different areas, and those areas complement each other. And that will happen naturally as you get people working together. I mean, I wouldn't try and do a skills matrix, right? And also what will always happen from a skills matrix is you look for the weakest points and then you focus on, we have to get this mark up kind of thing. But rather treat the team as an organic system. Let people work together and influence each other and have an impact on each other. And then you'll see people filling the gaps in the team, and it will happen naturally. Yeah.
Well, let's take a step back to what is, you talked about the dopamine, oxytocin cycles of the forming of the neural connections, but when someone knows that they are getting constructive feedback or critical feedback is what you're saying, what shuts it down really?
So when we get negative feedback, and there's actually research, and we'll put the link to the paper in the study. So what they did was they got students, and they tried two different ways of coaching them. One was looking at their homework from yesterday and finding the mistakes and getting them to improve that. And the other was projecting, getting them to imagine their ideal self and their hopes and aspirations, and projecting that forward and coaching them towards that with the work that they did. And while they were getting these coaching sessions, they had them in fMRI machines. So they were watching what was going on in their brain. The students who were getting the constructive feedback, basically looking at their homework from yesterday and finding the mistakes, like, you need to do better in this. What lights up is the sympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight part of the brain. And what that part of our brain is designed to do is to shut down our prefrontal cortex. Our prefrontal cortex is where we reason, where we think, and where we have self-control, our will, our controlled will, is in our prefrontal cortex. And that gets shut down because the signal is danger. Right, and in danger, you've got to get ready to just act, don't think, right? And that's probably saved both of our lives at some point in our, a car pulls out in front of you, you just swerve, you don't think, right? That's the fight or flight system kicking in. So we're trying to get people to learn, but what it actually does is it shuts down our learning centers. Whereas with the other team who were getting the forward-looking coaching towards what makes them unique, instead of looking at all the mistakes, what lit up for them was a parasympathetic nervous system, the rest or digest, and that's what activates our prefrontal cortex. Where people think better, you start to get that neuroplasticity. So it's not just theory, you can literally see it. You can see it in an fMRI machine. You can put people in, give them the two kinds of coaching, and you can watch that learning part of the brain, that cognitive part of the brain shut down when they get that. It's literally people go into fight or flight. I think it's almost comical that we have this best practice that's constructive feedback, and this is the driving force of how you're a good manager. And people hate it so much that now we have to train people on how to receive constructive feedback, right? And I don't mean to be too flippant about it, because a lot of very sincere managers have been taught this and they really are trying to do the right thing, but it's just not how our brains work, right? We are not machines. We are organic systems, and we are organic systems that work in a particular way and that we work in a unique way.
So as a manager, then my question for you then would be then how do I do this well? And before we go into that, I think what I'm learning from this is that even if we were to coach people on how to receive constructive criticism, on how to give constructive criticism, the point is that our brains react So it's not a case where we can train people to sort of am I right that we can't really train people
Yeah.
to like not activate that fight or flight?
We can't change our biology.
Okay.
Uh,
So then how can a manager or a leader or someone anyway that I'm working with, how can I give constructive or critical feedback well?
Well, so I wouldn't, if we're talking about constructive feedback, meaning critical feedback, I think you just out and say it. And it should only be when something is failing. Like this is a problem that needs to stop, right? So I was a programmer. If someone keeps committing a PR that's, code into the code base before it's reviewed, like, dude, you got to stop that, right? And there's going to be consequences if you don't stop doing that, right? Because that's failing. But if that's what we're doing most of the time, there's a bigger problem, right? If people are so bad they're failing all over that's what we have to do all the time. Like that should be the exception. What we should do instead is in this study that I was talking about earlier, what they were testing was it's called ideal self coaching, where you project your ideal self forward, and your ideal self is the sum of all your hopes and aspirations. Like what would you love to see yourself as being in the future, and then coach towards that. And it works very, very well, right? People self-propel themselves towards those goals because it's now goals that are coming from them. What I suggest, actually, because there's quite a bit of subjectivity in that, right? Maybe they think, well, I'd love to be this thing that's completely different because I'm really hating this other thing that I'm doing right now. And then they get there and they find, actually, no, that's not me. What I tested for years was looking for these neural signals in the work that people do. So we'd have a one-to-one once a week, and one-to-one's really short. It's not the quality of one-to-ones, it's the frequency. But one thing that I would touch on in all the one-to-ones is, of the work you were doing, was there anything where you felt energized afterwards? And it might be in your interactions, you're helping somebody else. It's not necessarily the exact tasks you were doing, but in your work life. And we'd take a note of that. Or did you lose track of time? We'd take a note of that. Or I might notice that they did something really well, and when I compliment them on that and say, like, that was really great, tell me about that, and they're kind of surprised, like, yeah, what else would I do? That's something that comes so naturally to them that they don't realize everyone else isn't like that, right? That's a good signal that that's how their neurology is wired. Or if somebody is uniquely frustrated by something, not someone who's always negative, but someone's puzzlingly frustrated by something, there's probably something under there that their brain works in a certain way that they don't realize everyone else doesn't work like that. And let's dig into that and find a way to bring that constructively to the team. And I can give examples of like really amazing results from some of those things. And then as we collect so each of these is like a little snapshot, a little snippet of what their real ideal self is, how their neurology really maps onto the work that they do. And the more of those signals we can get, which is why we want people picking up as many different things and playing as many roles as they can, so we get more and more signals. Each of those signals starts to build up that picture. And the more of those signals we get, the more of a higher and higher resolution picture we get. That alone is enormously motivating for people. Most people have never had anyone look at them and say, okay, let's look at you in an objective way and an evidence-based way and find out what makes you unique and how you can craft your unique impact in the work that we need to do, because impact is value, right? Everything should come down to impact. So you were talking, I'm not sure if it was this episode or last episode, about different traits and things. It's not those traits that matter. It's the impact that you have that matters, right? The impact is value to the company. Whatever your traits are, if you're not having an impact, what's the point of them? If you're having an impact. So we craft an impact in a negotiation with the work that the team has to do with each person based on what we're learning from them. And so then what we do is we look at very specific things like skills that you had, work you were doing, and responsibilities you had, really specifically, 6 months in the past and then 6 months going back further than that. And that gives us a trajectory of where you're heading with those three things: skills, work being done and responsibilities follows on from skills. And then we can say, now based on what we're learning about you, where your neurology, where your uniqueness is in the team, how do we alter that trajectory? How do we plan the next 6 months and the 6 months after that, but not further than that? But it's in the work that needs to be done. So maybe in a year's time you want to have these responsibilities because you're really loving this sort of thing. So in the next 6 months, what new skills do you need? What work do you need to be doing so that the 6 months after that, those things can become a responsibility? It's primarily forward-looking, and we're really looking at, in an evidence-based way, looking for these signals in the work that they're doing, that they're uniquely suited to that and can make a unique impact. And when I first introduced this to one of my teams some years ago, it was amazing. Senior programmers were still talking about it 2 weeks later. It was like they were so excited about it. And I think the difference is, instead of getting people just to imagine their ideal self, which is kind of abstract, we're looking actually in the work you do. These are the signals that you're making a unique impact in these ways, and then being deliberate about planning that forward. That is, in my experience, that's one of the most inspiring things a person can do. And it's not difficult to do, right? Anyone can do it. As long as you're being honest, you're not being a jerk, you're not playing games with people. You're just looking for these things. And then people who are maybe negative or not positive people in the team, when you start doing that, they're starting to get positive. They're starting to find those things. They're starting to get like, yes, that was great, right? And there's something special about me. And so the whole mood of the team goes up. So the chances that you're going to have to give constructive feedback at some point goes down and down and down and down, because people are just propelling themselves to excellence. Yeah.
Well, I just have one last question then. This almost sounds very ideal. And if I put on a very maybe skeptical hat on as a manager, right? In my experience in my past companies, when, say, a project didn't go well, you'd still want to look back and say, okay, what did we fail in and what do we not want to repeat again? Or, for example, we had these weekly and monthly reviews where we would actually report, okay, this is whatever our gap is to goal. As of today, our goal should be, or where we should be is here, and yet we're back here. What are the 1, 2, or 3 things that went wrong that we're now going to fix to get us back to goal? Or if we were above goal, then why are we above goal? To look at what are the things that we did well, and maybe the question is that we didn't set the goal very right. Maybe the goal should have been higher. So as a skeptical manager, I think if I was listening to this, I would kind of ask like, well, that sounds really nice, but we still need to look at, what went wrong, right? And review it.
Yeah, so we should constantly be reviewing things, but I don't think we should be reviewing to say, okay, what went wrong? What we should be doing is reviewing and say, okay, this is how we did. What are the things we can do now to be even better next time? And if we did things that we messed up, we'd say, okay, well, one of the things we can do is to not mess up, right? And figure out how that happened and try not to do that again, or fix that, or maybe turn that into something that works really well with the team. But there's also going to be things that you did really well, and how can we do those things better? And that's where you're going to get more growth, is those things that you do well, and pay real attention to look for things that you're doing well that you don't even realize you're doing as a team, because those are the things that come most naturally to you as a team. And try and be more specific about those, more deliberate about those. Instead of those things happening by accident, try and really be deliberate about them and find ways to do those better. I'll give an example, right? In fact, it's an example I gave before when we first started swarming on tasks in my first team. It had all these great side effects, right? Performance went up, quality went up, energy went up. But there were a couple of roles in the team. We had one designer, one API developer, one QA person. And they were, because of this swarming and constant communication, they were getting bombarded with requests all the time, and they were battling with that. So okay, we don't want to lose what's working really well. Now, how can we sort this out? So it was really simple. Just make a chat channel for each of them, and if anyone has a request, they just post it in that chat channel rather than pinging them directly. And these people would come in when they have a break in the other stuff they're doing, and they'll answer any queries in there, which actually worked out really well for them. So we're not looking at like what did we do well, what did we do badly so much. We're looking at like what we did, what was working, and what are the things we can do in the ways that we work to improve them for next time. And we should be doing that really regularly. Every team should be doing that really regularly. And it's not about, oh, we're subpar, we're overpar. It's about we're here now, and we want to be over there. So there's just this gap, right? It's everything is just a gap. We're here, and even if we did fantastically, well, we can do even more fantastically next time. So there's a gap to where we could be next time. So what are the simplest things we can do to bridge that gap? It's also really important as a manager to set the tone that it's okay to say, I don't think I did this really well. I think I could do that a bit better. Do that as the manager, right? This is part of the atmosphere of trust. It's important for me as a manager to sometimes say to my people, like, I'm thinking about this or that. Like, I'm struggling with this. Can you help me? Have you got any ideas? And make it really clear that it's fine to ask questions. It's fine to ask for help. It's fine to say, oh, I don't think I did that well. I'm thinking of doing this next time. Can you give me some feedback on that? And set that really honest environment. And then it's much, much easier for people.
I think we're going to close up this episode here, but I just wanted to go through this again and highlight some of the key points and takeaways for our listeners, and things that I'm also learning at the same time. There is a instinctual reaction that we have to constructive feedback. And so when but instead, if we were able to focus on not just the weakest link, but we looked at the potential of growth, and we help people focus on that. And some of the really interesting neural cues that you can go home and start paying attention for yourself is things like, are you doing certain things where you just love it and you get into it and you don't even look at your phone, for example, and you just love that focus and you lose track of time? Or are there certain things that particularly frustrate you? And for me, one of the other things that I look at too is there something where it seems so simple to you and somehow other people can't seem to see it, and you have to keep explaining yourself and you're like, how is this not obvious? Those are all really neural cues of your very unique construction, I guess, and your strengths. And you look for that for yourself and in your team as a manager. What are these things that you can pull out? And as you help people, you look backwards for patterns of behavior, but you help people project forward so that they can then really construct themselves or really
and what's really important
themselves.
is that they're projecting forward in the work that needs to be done. Like what skills do they need, what work do they want to be doing, what impact do they want to be having in the team, and what responsibilities do they want. So it's not just this abstract, this is me, accept me. It's like, this is in the work that we're doing. It really needs to be deeply embedded in the work that people do.
And it's not that we shouldn't review, failures or should not be giving negative feedback, but it is in cases where you're preventing damage or failure or overall, something to the team overall that's damaging. But to focus or try to shift that mindset towards growth.
Yeah, and even in that case where something went wrong and we're dealing with a problem, try and frame it in what's the right way forward. Right? Always frame it in what's the right way forward.
Yeah.
And dopamine is the neurochemical of the right way forward. So always focus on the right way forward.
Because your neurology learns better from the right path than really cutting off what's not right.
We're made to be addicted to being on the right path.
Right.
Yes. That's what that dopamine cycle does. It's addicted to the right path.
Yeah.
And the right path is very motivating because dopamine is the neurochemical of motivation, and it's the neurochemical of pursuing the right path.
And I think that's really interesting that we're made to do great work. We're made to be excellent, that we're geared and wired to do that. So I think we'll end this episode here, and we'll come back next week and we'll talk about this collective intelligence that we've been mentioning, but I think we really need to really dive in because it's kind of a new area.
Yeah, a new area of research, but it's actually one of the most powerful things, simple, powerful things you can do in a team to boost performance.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.